Hi everyone, it's Steve. In today's video, I'll be using the Anker SOLIX C2000 Gen 2 along with the Anker SOLIX alternator charger to work on some things outside. So in order to do some work out there, I knew I was going to be working in and around my shed area and that I would need my C2000 Gen 2 along with my case that has all of my cables and connectors in it, along with a solar panel, the Anker SOLIX PS100, to use that to power some of my equipment that was out in my shed. So what I did was I set the panel up along with the C2000 Gen 2, and I was going to use some of the tools from inside the shed to start working in and around the outside. Unfortunately, upon opening the shed, I noticed there had been some leaking inside the shed that needed immediate attention. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to back my tractor out of the shed. Now the battery that was in the tractor is at about 12.1 volts, somewhere in that neighborhood, and in order to work on getting it out of there, I'm going to need to charge that to about somewhere between 12.6 and 12.8 volt. This is where the Anker SOLIX alternator charger came into play. So what I decided to do was kind of shift my focus from working outside to working on getting the battery charged. As such, I decided, okay, since the C2000 Gen 2 was charged to 100% here, I was going to hook up the Anker SOLIX C2000 Gen 2 reverse charge cable that I just received in the mail to work with the alternator charger. So after I hooked up the cable, you can see it here connected to the alternator charger. I then ran the alternator charger cable out from the AS200 and attached it to the battery to begin the process of charging it. Now, what I noticed was in the app, you'll see a battery status on the screen in the C2000 Gen 2 that actually shows you the Anker SOLIX alternator charger cable is attached in reverse charge mode. So it does represent a difference in the app. So here is the Anker SOLIX AS200 being turned on. You can see the blue light there. Now the first thing it did was it asked for a firmware update because I had never hooked up this reverse charging cable before. So I had to make sure that I did the firmware update before I could even start. Now once the firmware update was completed, you can see both the alternator charger and C2000 Gen 2. So it immediately detects that I'm now going to be in reverse charge mode because I have that cable hooked up. It does see the battery, which is a 12 volt lead acid battery, is at 12.1 volts, and I want it to be somewhere in the 12.6 to 12.8 range. So what I do is once I recognize that it's connected, I hit the power button and you can slowly see it ramping up here as it begins the reverse mode process. It's charging from the C2000 Gen 2 and it's actually charging the 12 volt lawnmower battery. So you can see how it's going through the process. Even though the reverse mode I selected was 300 watts, it's only sending about 100 watts to the battery and it's working its way down from 14 volts slowly. And this process ran just about under 30 minutes. And at the end of this process here, you're going to see once the battery achieves that 12.8 volt mark, the alternator charger turns off from reverse charge mode and returns the app back to the regular charging mode. And upon closer look, you can actually see that it only used about 1% of the C2000 Gen 2's battery in order to charge that lawnmower battery. So you can kind of get an idea of how this would work for you if you decided you wanted to use the C2000 Gen 2 with the Anker SOLIX AS200 alternator charger to charge a battery, much like I did here. Now, I attached the documentation from Anker SOLIX that shows how the reverse charge mode works. So if you decide you want to use the reverse charge mode, pause this here and you can get an idea of how that works. And as a reminder, the cable for the Anker SOLIX alternator charger reverse charge mode from the C2000 Gen 2 is available on the Anker site. So this is how we use the C2000 Gen 2. This is how you can power your distance. And I hope this information was useful for you. I appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.